Hello, everyone. On this podcast episode, I'm going to talk about God and creation. Many atheists believe that God can't create himself, right? That it's impossible for God to create himself. If God created the world, then what created God? The people who ask that question are people who don't understand what the world is. They don't understand what God is. When you don't understand the world, and when you don't understand God and the Bible, only then do you become an atheist. Only when you don't understand the world do you become an atheist. Because the world itself is God. When you don't understand the Bible, that's when you start thinking that you start to believe that God in the Bible is a human being. It's like Zeus, a physical being with flesh and blood. The God of the Bible is not a physical being with flesh and blood. The God of the Bible is omnipresent. The God of the Bible is omniscient. And the God of the Bible is omnipotent. Omnipresence is the very definition of the world itself. What you call the world, it is God. God is the very world itself. That's why God is omnipresent. Because everything is God. Just like your body. Everything inside your body is you. So within your body, you are omnipresent. Because every cell in that body of yours is you. It is your DNA. It is you. You are omnipresent within your body because every cell in your body is you. Everything in this world is God. God is the world itself. That's why God is omnipresent. So how can something that's omnipresent create itself? God is the creator of the rules. And the rules are the rules of creation and destruction. The rules of beginning and end. Meaning before God created the world, the concept of creation didn't exist. The concept of destruction didn't exist. Existence and non-existence are simply rules that God put in place in this world. Beginning and end are simply rules that God has placed in this world. Movement and non-movement are simply rules that God has placed in this world. We live in a world of rules because the world can only exist because of rules. Things can only exist because of rules. The process of creating things is the process of creating rules that govern how the thing behaves. Logical rules. That's why this world is a world of rules, because a world can only exist because of rules. Without rules, there's no such thing as a world. So God created this world out of his own body, using rules, using scientific rules. The world itself is God, and God can create the world. God can create himself. Because before creation and destruction was, God is. God has always been, and God will always be. Creation and destructions are products created by God himself. Creation and destruction can only exist through God. Life and death can only exist through God. Past and future can only exist through God. Existence and non-existence can only exist through God. That is why God is omnipresent, because God is everything. Things can only exist, things can only come into being through God. So by default, God is everything. God is the world itself. So many people say the world can't create itself. Many people say God can't create itself. But here's an example of the world creating itself. The world are your cells. And your cells are always replicating. They're always creating themselves. When a sperm and an egg come together, they turn into one cell, right? When a sperm and an egg come together, they turn into one cell. The process of your child developing is the process of that cell growing and creating itself. Every time your cell divides into two cells, when that one cell divided into two cells, it created itself. It cloned itself into two. It turned from one to two by creating itself. Your cells create themselves in order to grow. When your cell was in your mom's womb, the process of it growing to become you is the process of it creating itself. Every time your cells divide, they create themselves. The whole process of mitosis and meiosis is the process of self-division. It's the process of your cells creating themselves. That is why every cell in your body has the same DNA, because it's practically a clone. It is practically you. Every cell in your body is a clone of you. That's why they have the same DNA, because they're just specialized version of the same thing. They're just clones that look different. That's all they are, clones. Your body is a body of clones. Every cell in your body is related. Every cell in your body is a clone. That's why every cell in your body is you. Everything in that body of yours is you, because your entire body is just a colony of clones, a colony of cells that only replicate themselves. That's all they do. When your cells, when some cells die and new cells take their place, the entire process is your cells creating themselves. That's all they're doing. You can only be alive right now because your cells are capable of creating themselves. That's why you're alive. And your cells are what? Objects of the world. If your cells can create themselves, the world can create itself. Because your cells are part of the world. Your cells are the world itself. So the very act of your cells creating themselves is the very act of the world creating itself. Is the very act of God creating itself. The world always clones itself. That's how the world creates things, by cloning itself. That's why everything in this world is the world itself. That's why you can only exist through the world itself. Because the act of creation is the act of cloning. Act of creating rules that govern everything. God is the world itself. Because everything in this world is a clone of God. That's why God is omnipresent. Because everything in this world is God. Because everything in your body is a clone of you. That's why everything in your body is you. That's why within your body, you are omnipresent. Within your body, everything is you. So you are by default omnipresent within your body. Because everything in this world is God. God is by default omnipresent. God is the very world itself. God is the rule creator. God is the one that makes the rules. Because God is the rules. You can only exist through God. God is the world itself. Your cells can only exist through the first cell. The first cell, that first cell that was created when when the egg and sperms came together. Everything else in your body came through that cell. Because of that one cell, that existed during conception. Because of that one cell, the rest of your body could exist. So your entire body came through that cell. Your body can only exist through that cell. That's why your entire body has the same DNA, because it's just, a replica of that cell. That cell created itself and transformed into your body. God created himself and transformed into the world. God is the world itself, because you can only exist through God. God is just like that cell. It is the origin of everything. God is the origin of the world itself. The very core of the world is God. That's why God is omnipresent. Everything in this world is God. And God can create himself, because God is the one that make the rules. The creator of the rules are not bound by the rules. The creator of the rules can create the rules and change the rules how he feels like it. The world is the one that created the rules, not you. So the world can do whatever it wants with the rules. God is the world itself. And God can do whatever he wants with the rules that he has created. He created the rules, he can also destroy the rules. So that's it for today's podcast episode. You have to understand that life is easier than you think. It's easy to understand this world when you know that the world itself is God. And when you don't know how this world works, when you don't know how God works, only then do you become an atheist. When you're not logical enough to understand how the world works, only then do you choose to become an atheist. When you're not logical enough to understand what the Bible is telling you, only then do you choose to become an atheist and start insulting the Bible. Atheists insult the Bible all the time for not making sense, when it's not that the Bible doesn't make sense. They're just not logical enough to understand the Bible. They're not smart enough to understand what the Bible is telling them. When you're not logical enough to understand what people are telling you, you start to think the people are lying to you. You start to see the people as fools, when it's not the people that are fools, it's you. It's not the Bible that's lying to you. You're just not smart enough to understand what the Bible is telling you. You're not logical enough to understand what omnipresence implies. Omnipresence means the world itself. God is omnipresent because God is the world itself. And the world created you. So God is your creator. The world is your creator. The world is God. I pray for everyone's safety and understanding. Amen.